Welcome to Minot Talk this Tuesday morning.
Good morning. Welcome back, Jonathan.
Yeah. Was I gone?
No.
Okay.
But it's Tuesday. We're back.
It's Tuesday. Well, hey, welcome back to you as well, Kyler. And today we're joined by a special guest, Alderwoman Lisa Olson.
Good morning.
A real welcome back.
Yes, a real welcome back. Yes. Thank you for joining us today. Kyler, you doing all right? Football season's over?
Yeah,
You're surviving?
We're done. It wasn't the best way to end the season, but we ended the season and we're all wrapped up. So on to next year.
On to next year. Yeah. That's right. You going to do it again next year?
If they haven't asked for my keys back. So at this point, yes.
That's great to hear. I'm sure the kids enjoyed it.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. We'll see who comes back and plays again next year. Maybe they didn't, but I think they did because I had fun.
Yeah. Did you guys have, like, for your defense, did you have like a moniker? Legion of Boom or anything like that?
Well, we had Slammo. Slammo. That was our we had
nice.
Long story, but yes, Slammo was our heavy package effectively.
Okay, gotcha. Well, next year we talked about it. Next year we'll actually have to like talk to the school and have a post game deal something.
Oh, we could. Oh, they would love it.
Yeah, that'd be blast. Get some interviews with them, and
it's probably the only time that middle school boys would be quiet, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. As soon as there's a bike,
stop yapping.
Yeah, love it. As much fun as Surrey football is, we're here to talk City Council today.
Yeah, Minot City Council too.
Minot City Council, yes.
You guys wrapped up a big meeting last night.
You did.
Yeah,
we did, and actually we're out of there at a decent time.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, the prediction, I thought 8:30, and we were out by 8, so that was pleasant.
So you guys also predict what time your meetings will be done?
We do.
I love that.
Yes.
See, I don't bet. I don't suggest you bet. I'm not encouraging betting or anything.
I am.
But I think it would really be interesting if you had, like, Poly Markets always running odds and stuff like that on a city council meeting.
Plus 500.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess the Blue Rider bingo is right there, maybe filling in that gap. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if there were some real betting, you'd have some real slow talkers at the end.
Yeah. You have way more public appearances.
Right.
So people start showing up just for the heck of it.
Gotta get this longer today.
Yeah.
Okay. That would not be productive to the game. Before last night's city council meeting, there was a budget that was approved. The 2026 budget is finalized. I guess maybe last night they created a question about it, but generally it's finalized, right?
Yes.
So not anything specific, just a general, you can get into specifics. I'm not asking a specific question, just thoughts on the budget. Was it good? Was it bad? Where do we come in good? Where do we come in? Maybe we got to look at that again.
Certainly, there was a lot of discussion.
Yes.
And we typically start that budget process late April, early May, and start having those discussions.
Right.
These were heavy. These were very involved. It was complicated with some changes in our leadership, and so who kind of takes the lead in some of those discussions. All of those things had to play out.
Right.
The goal, I think, for everyone was to keep property taxes at a manageable level. Mm-hmm. And I think that we achieved that. The way that we achieved it, essentially, though, was to dip into some reserves.
Right.
Which the reserves were there to dip into. Mm-hmm. And it was, it was a decision that was made. I voted in favor of it, so I can't say that I'm opposed to it. It's a little concerning long term. Mm-hmm.
Works great this year. Looking forward in the future, probably not something sustainable year after year.
That's my fear.
Okay,
yeah,
fair.
and certainly we were in that $10.5–11 million range in reserves. Part of that is the $5 million that was dedicated to the
police department,
rehab, and hopefully, I won't be there to vote on it, but hopefully the next councils will go ahead and continue that for another 2 years, because the goal was to get to about $15 million.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting part, though, about using the reserves, is that for the next 3 years, basically, including this year, the 2026 budget, there's a plan to use $5 million for the police department from reserves.
Yes.
So if we dip too heavily into them, then we got to make sure that that still makes sense 2 years from now when you're taking that last $5 million.
Right. And I guess my philosophy has always been, when you take from reserves, it should be a one-time purchase, or, we use some reserves to help pay for City Hall, the rehab in City Hall, things like that. Actually, we took from reserves to kind of fill in some gap financing on the CTE building.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But that was a one-time
Right.
allotment of funds, not continual.
Right. Yep. And another huge deal was the feeling of repaying back that around $7 million overage. I think the biggest question that I have with the reserves, if you go and you add in the $5 million for the police department, I think like the 3.6 or right around there, that was considered part of the overage from a couple budgets ago from the general fund. That put you up to 8. So assuming that won't be used again, just making that assumption, which may be a grand assumption, that'd still be $3 million or so from reserves. Do you see that in future budgets where we're making $3 million of cuts, or do you see, because obviously not going to be able to come from reserves every year, I think everyone would agree with that, where that comes from more cuts, or is this going to be where there might be a little bit of a, not a shock, but a little bit of reset on the budget in a year or two?
Well, I'll kind of paraphrase what Alderman Paul Pittner said, and I agree with him, that we are not truthful in what it costs to run our government.
Yeah.
Because we could use the reserves, we were able to cut property taxes down.
Right.
However, it does not appropriately reflect what our true costs are. And if the reserves disappear, then we still have the bills to pay. We still have our employees to pay. We still have the roads to pay. We still have the water to clean, all of those things. And at some point, and we've been there before, I've been on council for almost 16 years. We've been in that situation before where we've relied either on reserves or sales tax funding, and all of a sudden the ship hits the sand, and you still have to pay the bills.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, very good.
I love that expression, the ship hits the sand.
Yeah,
that was
fantastic.
I
was an elementary teacher. That's the one that you can use in school.
That was great.
I love it. Very good.
Yeah.
So at that meeting, there was, I don't know what the right word is. You could say surprise, unexpected, whatever. But you made a motion to suspend the rules of the meeting. I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card that we just talked about. That's not necessarily something common. There's been, and I'm not interested at all getting into this, some discussion about whether that was fair, not fair, right or not. Legally, the city attorney said that, and that falls on her whether or not it is legal or not. That's why we have a city attorney at the meeting.
But going off of her word for it.
Right, yeah, and of her interpretation of law, ordinance, Robert's Rules of Order. The question that I have for you, though, is more along the lines of kind of where did this come from, and going forward in council, do you see it as being something, having it done there, someone's going to refer, it's going to be mentioned, I don't know when, but one of these days it will be mentioned. What's your view on that? Is this a good thing? Is this healthy? Just kind of get your feedback on that. Maybe why, and is it a good thing? Okay.
And I'll just say historically, and I said this in the meeting before I made the motion, we've always made changes during second reading. It kind of drives the finance department staff crazy because they only have a couple of days to finalize that budget after our second reading.
Right.
But there's always changes. We've never had the situation where a portion has been voted on and then was just locked in and not able to make some amendments to it. And so I only learned of this idea that we wouldn't be making changes minutes before the meeting. And so I felt like there were things that still needed to be discussed. They needed to be considered again. And the only option to do that then was to suspend the rules.
Right.
I don't think it's good practice to be doing that all of the time, but the budget is probably the most important thing that we vote on each year, and it needed to be done right in my mind. And it also, and I mentioned this in the meeting too, we only have a public hearing at the first reading. We don't have a public hearing at the second reading. And so things happen during that first reading, and then the public says, whoa, 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 whoa.
Right.
Let's talk about this. I don't like this. Let's change that. And they don't get that opportunity to come to us again. So the only voice that they have is ours. And that's why I felt it was important enough to make that motion. It did pass, much to the chagrin of some others. I don't probably intend on doing it again. But I think in that situation, it was the right way to go.
No. Yeah, I hear you there. And to be clear, because I think that this was something that kind of right out of the gate, wanted to be tied to it. But there was a motion that was made, first motion after rules are suspended. Rules get suspended. First motion is, let's revisit the League of Cities. But the way that was worded, and I believe we've already mentioned it, but the way that was worded is very clear. That motion was coming back from somebody that voted in favor of leaving the League of Cities and had every right to bring that back without any rules being suspended. It was within the normal rules of council for them to be able to bring that back. And so that was going to be brought back. And I just want to, again, make that very clear so that way people don't feel like that was.
No, and I did state in the meeting too. The reason that I made the motion was I had 3 different amendments that I wanted to make, not related to the League of Cities. It was Alderman Hayes that made the motion to reconsider the membership in the League of Cities, which I supported. However, that was not the reason that I'd made the motion.
So I want to get your feedback on that one, and we're on it. Why is the League of Cities important to the city of Minot?
Well, I think most importantly is the training that they offer to our staff. Some training is actually required through Century Code for our assessors, and they are the entity that provides that training.
Okay.
And they are advocates for the city.
Right.
Now, there was discussion, there was disagreement during the last legislative session on what and how they were advocating for.
Sure.
So that was really the issue. I think we need to be probably clearer on what our message is during that. And we don't only rely on the League of Cities. We also have, we have Shane Gettle, who represents us down in the legislative session as well. So we have a couple of options as far as advocacy. But those would be the 2 things, the training for our staff and the advocacy. And as I mentioned in that meeting too, and I had gotten some information from the League, I think we had like an $8 million benefit from our membership last year, and the membership is only $25,000.
Right.
Well, it just it makes sense.
Even if it's not quite that high, like that's still a great return on investment.
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Even because there's discussion on the advocacy part, I think that's where all the
That's
discussion
where I think
goes.
most of it
Nobody
is.
disputes the training part, but it sounds like there's even value on the training part, where you might even be close. And I don't have the numbers, and I don't know that you have the numbers. But if you're paying for training that's required, like you're going to pay for this training one way or another,
Exactly.
then you may be even breaking even there, whether you agree with the advocacy or not.
And I did kind of query the League of Cities, asking what they were going to do if the decision was made that the city would not continue our membership, whether or not we would be able to pay them for our staff to attend that training. Well, because this was the first time it had ever come up, their board hadn't met to make a determination.
Gotcha.
So it might have been a possibility, but yes, we certainly would have had to pay for it in some way, shape, or form.
It didn't get far enough in their realm to figure out what their next step would have been.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other amendments, one of them was for the heavy equipment operator. The other one was for the $2 million. And then there was a third one, and I forget off the top of my head. I should have it on my notes in front of me, but I don't remember that one being brought up before. Do you remember what the third amendment was?
I am blanking on it too.
me too. Up my
No, that's all right. Kyler will find it. I don't remember that one.
Convert $2 million into unfunded liability.
after that one.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So we had
Take notes.
so the $2 million that were going to be returned to the taxpayers in the form of a refund, or just paying. We're not writing checks, but they would pay lesser taxes in 2026. I made a motion to convert that to our unfunded liability for our pension plan, which is
Huge number.
I think it's 72 million, somewhere
like
in that neighborhood. As long as I've been on council, we've had that unfunded liability. That was decisions made by councils decades ago to not put enough in. And that was at a point when all of the employees were on that pension. Well, now that pension has closed. We have fewer and fewer people paying into it. And the amount that the city will be responsible for is only going to increase.
Gotcha.
Well, we have to pass that on to the taxpayers.
Right, yeah.
And so, and I don't want to make light of this amount, because I know there are people whose income is stretched enough that $4 a month makes a difference.
Yeah.
I know that. I get that. That was the savings to an individual who owned a property that was worth $100,000. $4 per $100,000 of value into property. $4 a month, $48 a year. Well, they're going to get the $4 a month now because my motion failed.
Right.
But maybe 5 years down the road, we're going to be asking $25 of them.
Yep. Right.
it just made sense to me to just put that $2 million on that. Again, it's still going to be a large amount in unfunded liability, but it was just paying it down a little bit. But the motion failed.
So that unfunded liability has been there for many years now, and it's going to be there for many years. Finance Director Lakefield had that in his concerns list of concerns, or things basically that the council needs to be aware of going into future budgets. How concerning, in your view, how concerning is this? Because when he was questioned on it, he's like, right now we're good with it, but basically in the future we might not be. That was basically because you don't know the future, and that's a huge number. That's not something where anybody can just pull out a checkbook and write. We'd definitely have to take on debt for something like that of that size, if it all came due tomorrow. How much of a concern is it for you as you see that number?
Well, it is concerning because again, if it were a plan that we still had employees paying into it, it makes sense. But they're all going to age out.
Right.
You know, a number of them have already retired, and so that number is just smaller and smaller. And I mean, no matter what agency or entity it is, I believe that retirees deserve their retirement. They work towards that. Right. They have budgeted for it. They're planning on that. And then to maybe pull the rug out at some point and say, oh gosh, we can't afford this anymore.
Right.
That's not the right thing to do. So, chipping away at it in some way to me makes more sense.
Makes sense. The last motion that was brought up after the suspension of the rules was about the VERF, the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund. I think every year, and then we mentioned this already, you get to the budget and there's like something that like, okay, yeah. And then it becomes a thing. And you're like, I did not see this one becoming a thing.
The VERF takes that one this year.
And I'm not saying that there's invalid discussion around it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you go through it and it's interesting the things that pop out. Last year's pretty obvious. It was the payment plans. There was a lot of discussion about that. But we knew there was going to be discussions around that. This year's the VERF.
Yeah.
So basically, two sides to this. Well, maybe there's more, but two main arguments that we heard. One, hey, we will not have unplanned purchases. We will be prepared for our purchases as we go to replace cars. The other side was just pay it out of the general fund. Let's not be buying unnecessary cars is basically the messaging that was sent out on it, set on it. Your view on the VERF, is this something that the city should be doing in future councils, or is this something that just people, that way they can always have a nice car, as maybe was presented?
Right. So when it was initially introduced to us, because I was unfamiliar with the VERF philosophy or the
concept,
exactly. It sounded interesting enough to me to have staff continue, because when they brought it to us, they said, here's what we could do, but we don't want to put weeks of work into it if it's just going to be, we're not going to do that. And there was a general consensus that, maybe this is something that we should be looking into. We knew going into it that the first year it would cost us more than just what regular vehicle purchases, the replacement cost would be. We knew that. And so then the VERF was brought to us, and of course the number was higher, and it was determined that we should not go ahead with the VERF. Because it's one of those situations where we don't know what we don't know. The plan sounded good, and it sounded like they had a way to make it work, because I know that there was some kind of consternation that, all right, well, here's a vehicle that might qualify because of its age, but it's still in good working order. And you've budgeted for that, but I mean, we
still works.
We would keep it. We would not spend it. And that maybe could be allocated towards a different vehicle, or it would just be saved for when that vehicle truly did need to be replaced. I think there was a plan. It didn't pass. I don't know if it'll be brought back again. I mean, we used reserves to pay for the vehicle replacements this year, and that's not something we've done in the past either. So,
makes sense.
That's fair. And looking back on the budget kind of as a whole now, this is probably your last budget cycle.
It's my plan.
How does this one compare to some of the others?
I think there was a lot more consternation in this one. I think there was.
Will this one stand out looking back as maybe not just the last one, but one of the more, I don't want to say entertaining, that's the wrong word, but interesting as your career?
Certainly. I think I'll just say all of 2025 falls in that category.
The last,
I kind of felt like it. people used to ask when I was still teaching too, like, are there changes? And it's like, well, some things you just know from year to year to year, this is the way it's going to be.
Right.
And then we threw COVID in.
Yep.
Big change. This, I kind of knew what the budget should look like. I knew what the process should look like. And
there was a rough outline.
This was a different year.
Yeah. The wrench got thrown in the spokes this year a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Transitioning out of budget talk into yesterday's meeting.
Yeah, that's right. I got to go back
We
to
had
my
a
other notes.
rebound meeting.
My good notes.
Budget. It's a
better ones.
letdown meeting. We got through all the big stuff. Finally get to relax a little bit. Nope.
No.
Not at city council right now. You guys got a lot of big stuff you guys are working through. Notably, probably the two biggest topics was sales tax that was again on the agenda, and then the alcohol, liquor licenses, caps, however you want to describe that, was again on the budget. So let's start with there. There's other stuff that was talked about, like the Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Yep.
There was other big things that were talked about. Regional CO2 storage project. That was an interesting deal that might save the city money. And we might talk about some of that stuff.
A really cool, kind of under the radar kind of thing with that one, I think.
Well, we've been doing that with Bismarck for the last couple of years. Jamestown was added in, but it's a creative way to save some money. And kudos to staff who came up with the idea.
Right. No, for sure. And hey, great point. Kudos to staff on that. All right, the alcohol ordinance. This is a big deal.
It's not just
K Hits 106. Thank you guys, and hi Lisa. We'll share Cliff Notes on the radio. Thank you for the great info. Thank you, K Hits. And they were reporting yesterday. We hit peak winds of 56 miles per hour.
Jeepers.
Could tell.
Some kind of gusty yesterday.
I went for a run at night and it was cold.
Wow.
It was freezing.
I believe that.
All right, to the stuff that's important.
Yes, last night's wasn't just about. Where was I going with that?
The liquor license.
The ordinance.
Yep.
It wasn't just a couple reworks to the thing. It was a comprehensive rewrite of the whole ordinance.
Yes. Yes. And that's been in process
for a while
because there'd been an ad hoc committee that met to discuss the ordinance and the caps.
Yep.
And I mean, they spent nearly a year reviewing all that.
Yeah, that was Alderman Pittner was the chair of that. Yeah, and they went through a lot. And obviously we saw this all start to come to the surface this spring when there was a 6-person council. And it didn't go anywhere at that time. So finally now we're able to bring it back up. And staff brings what's effectively the first draft to you guys last night.
Yes.
And
I think that this deal falls into, because you get into there's two parts of it. Let's start out with the caps and then we can get to the other stuff, because I think even as they're going through it, we can go and talk about this other stuff, but until we talk about the caps,
the caps and
this
the
stuff is secondary and so it feels like there's two principles that people were following from. One is I think everybody wants to do right for the people that have purchased it. I don't think there was anybody that was out to, I generally speaking, I don't think there was anybody that's out to harm them. But obviously their decisions could. So there's this idea of fairness, open market versus this is what's been in place. And if we do this, then we're going to have to pay out. And that's basically the only way to make it right, is to pay out money to the people.
And if there's not a payout, then likely risk
a lawsuit. And even if there's a payout, well, I guess there'd be some paper that had to be signed saying you aren't going to sue us.
At that point,
most likely. Kind of the two viewpoints. Where we heard you on council, but where do you fall in the whole conversation of this thing? Maybe there's another viewpoint we didn't mention. Where do you kind of fall in the whole conversation of caps, whether or not they should be removed or whether we should keep them in place?
Well, this has been a little bit cyclical too, because we looked at all of this in 2018 and spent a number of months looking at it at that point. And at that point, and now again last night, I, in my mind, believe that the cap system is working. It is based on population, and when our population increased based on the 2020 census, we did add a few more liquor licenses. But those liquor licenses are kind of unique animals because they have value. It's not a fee that's paid. It has value, just like a property does. And the people that have a liquor license have paid a lot of money. I mean, some that have maybe owned it for 20 years, maybe they went in at 100,000. We've seen them north of 200,000.
Yep.
And when we lift the caps, we have completely devalued that license. And I don't feel comfortable in doing that. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. The only way that I could see fixing it is to completely reimburse them for the amount that we charge them. And we don't have the money to do that. And I don't think that taxpayers would be in favor of it either. Even if we did, I think that they would be very upset if we took, $3-4 million or whatever and said, no, we're gonna make you whole. And so I voted the same way that I did in 2018 to leave the caps in place.
So there's a presentation on this that says there's caps that are there are caps that are available. There are licenses that are available. One of them is Epic, which is not available yet, but is most likely coming available soon.
Right.
And then the other ones that are mentioned are typically tied to an established business where they're maybe, who knows what that business person is thinking. Maybe they're thinking they would sell as a whole with their entire business. Maybe they're fine with separating them. What is your viewpoint on that? Do you view besides the Epic one, which is, that one's fairly cut and dry, but the licenses that are attached to established businesses, do you see those as being available licenses that are for sale? Or do you see those as being attached to the business? Because we've noticed that there's like two viewpoints on this as well.
Yeah. There are. Well, and we heard from one gentleman last night that has his business for sale and the liquor license is attached to the business.
Yep.
I just think in those situations, that's negotiations.
Yep.
Okay. We can separate those out.
Right.
Again, I'll go back to 2018 real quickly. Like every liquor license holder that came to testify said, every one of them is for sale. It just depends on the price. Yeah.
You can argue up to 30 plus are for sale if you really want to. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I just think that's negotiations.
Yeah.
So there's up to 4 available kind of thing right now would probably be a fair way to word it.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, like you said, there's up to 30. So
I mean, yes, actually, to be fair, yeah.
but actually on the market where people are actually trying to sell them. Yeah. So 4 licenses available, which would present the idea that maybe we don't need to raise the cap. So are you, something that Kyler has mentioned, so maybe Kyler should ask this question,
would you be interested in raising the cap itself from 1 in like 1,500 to 1 in 2,000 as just
the ratio?
A rough,
I think that could be considered.
Sure.
Certainly, because that isn't going to greatly devalue the license that someone owns. So, yes, I think that is something that could be looked at.
That's fair. That was my kind of compromise thought on the whole thing.
And, and I'll just say, I mean, I feel like I need to be an expert in something that I don't go to a bar. And so I hear from them when they come, the bar owners and such, when they come to city council, but I don't know the ins and outs, the how the business is run. Yeah. We heard from a few that business is down.
Sure.
So, but I just have to believe what they're telling me because I don't go there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Winter's coming.
Yeah, exactly. We call MSU's back in session. Winter's here.
So one last question on this, then we'll go to break and we'll talk about the other part of the alcohol ordinance. Kyler's in the area of, would you be open to this? So I'll ask you a question like that too. Would you be open to a proposal? I'm not going to put a name to it because that would actually look at the entire proposal, but just one principle. Are you open to its removing caps, getting rid of caps, but placing a monetary, so let's not place a number on it, but just some type of monetary figure that would be very high, so that way there would still be effectively a barrier to entry, a heavy barrier to entry. If that was proposed in 2 years when you're not on council potentially, was that something that you might be more willing to?
Yeah, and I would have even been last night. I mean, I felt that the best choice was to leave the caps in place.
Right. Sure.
Had that motion failed, yes, it is something that I would have considered. And it sounded like a few of the liquor license holders would have been in favor of that as well.
Or at least amicable to it.
Right.
Yeah, see, that was what was interesting. Early on, honestly, it felt like that could have been something that was made last night where the liquor license holders would have went home relatively happy. Early on in the process, like we sat down with Mueller Sports on Tap.
Yep.
And it seemed like he wasn't really excited about that idea. But last night, the conversation that's going on is like, all right, if we need to make a change, this is basically something that we'd be relatively open. Most of them still want caps in place, but if we need to, this is something we'd be relatively open to. That's what it felt like, in my opinion.
Yeah, that felt like kind of the compromise point of view for it, where obviously I think the vast consensus was they just wanted to leave it in place.
Right.
But if they were to end up going in a different direction, they probably could have lived with that.
Yep.
We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back right after that, talk a little bit more of this and more stuff that happened at City Council.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
Enjoy Minot's finest authentic Mexican cuisine with a view at Mi Mexico. The rooftop patio is open and ready for you to enjoy a margarita or other cool refreshment along with genuine mouth-watering Mexican entrees. Mi Mexico, South Broadway.
We're back.
Hi.
Thank you, Kyler.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes. All right. So we're going to continue our conversation on liquor licenses.
Specifically the licenses now.
Going away from the caps and talking about the actual licenses. Lead the way, Kyler.
One of the big points of topic or discussion you guys had last night on top of the caps was the license structure. Right now, there's a beer, wine, retail license that is separate from the off-sale, on-sale kind of license. And there was a lot of discussion about kind of breaking those up last night and how that would look. Do you think that's something that's likely to happen into the future? Or maybe a little more.
I think that a few things will happen. Yep. So we had a draft that was given to us, and as City Attorney Steph Stolheim mentioned to us, they brought some changes, but they didn't want to make dramatic sweeping changes. They wanted us to look at it and give some feedback, and then they'll work on it some more. So there were still, I think, 18 different licenses. I mean,
I think
it's unwieldy. Yeah.
And she said she could probably condense it to like 10 to 12.
Exactly, which will make more sense. And so I think that will help. It'll help clarify things for people in the business, and it should hopefully clarify things for people in law enforcement or just enforcement in general.
That's fair. That would be something I think that would be a beneficial thing in general, but then you have to start looking at say they were to differentiate the regular licenses with those off sale. There's about 7, I think, businesses that are strictly off sale.
Yes.
Those would be the ones that would be, I think, at least most affected, since those were the ones that had to pay, X amount of dollars for that license. Now all of a sudden, since they're strictly, it gets differentiated into a strictly off sale capacity. Do you think they would still be amenable to that?
I believe so.
Okay.
I mean, it seemed to make sense, and we did have the cart before the horse a little bit last night with 6.5 and 6.6 on the agenda, because we couldn't really discuss the off sale until we had determined whether there would be caps or not. Right. But yes, I think that's going to be something that will be a compromise. It was mentioned that the solely off sale businesses now could hold their liquor license. They can keep it. I mean, that again, it's property. Or they could choose to sell it, which would then make it available to someone else. So that might add a little bit of flexibility in there. And I think that's a concept that will pass.
That's fair. It's probably something to expect to see at that next reading of this draft when it comes back forward. And there'll be a lot more clarity in general with that next draft when it comes back forward.
I hope so.
Yeah, and it sounds like by creating that off-sale license and reconfiguring those, that might even solve the whole problem of why this even came up. It came up a little bit. You still have the bar owners that there's 4 available licenses. If you want to start a bar, you can go. I shouldn't say start a bar. It could be a different type of restaurant too. But start something like that where you need that license. You're able to go that route. If you're, as was brought up last night at City Council, if you're a Kroger coming in, then there would be a different license that you wouldn't be competing in that very limited base
Market,
very limited market to get that license, might solve at least maybe not the whole problem, but the majority of the problem just with that right there. We'll find out. Time will tell.
And one other discussion that was had too was about the specifications of the supper club license too.
Yeah.
Yes.
That seating.
Yeah, I know seating was one of the issues in it, and then if you remove that, can that open up the possibility for other people,
Wendy's,
to start trying to do those things?
Right, and truly, that was the 2018 issue was the supper club licenses. So I mean, it was touched on again last night, but that was kind of what brought things to a head in 2018. And I'm glad that the motion was made to put the seating requirement back in because. Fair. Yeah, I don't want it to be a free-for-all. There are places that you just want to be able to take your family or what have you and not have alcohol everywhere.
Or minimal if it is there kind of thing. Yeah.
Right, yeah. No, for sure. Very interesting. I think that covers liquor licenses pretty well for the time being. There's going to be more that's going to come back, and we'll talk about it again. Yeah. So,
you guys had a lot of public appearances for the liquor license last night specifically. Yeah, you got to see a lot of those owners and their representation come forward to discuss a lot of what was going on with it. And that was always great to see.
It was helpful, and this has happened in the past too. It was helpful that they are basically on the same page.
Yeah.
We have a lot of business owners who are in competition the rest of the week, but I mean, they came together, they had ideas, they were clear and concise in what they wanted us to consider for them. That's good.
They don't endorse this, and this is me thinking of it off the top of my head. They probably wouldn't even like it, but it's almost like the Bar Owners Union of Minot.
Oh my!
Well, that sounds like a country song.
I know.
Well done. All right. Moving on to another topic that may even circle us all the way back to a budget conversation. 6.7 was a sales tax ordinance amendment that came back for another reading. Obviously, before we jump into your amendment, let's kind of like establish basis for this.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk going on about restructuring how 0.5 cent sales tax, how it was distributed. This has created the conversation of economic development. We've heard a lot about economic development the last little bit. This is basically the reason why. There was talks about basically paying for the MACEDC, Minot Area Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Corporation, out of this 0.5 cent, but then basically having flexibility to do whatever we want with the remaining of the amount of this money, whether that goes for more economic development or whether that goes for something. There's a couple specifications on it. That was been the conversation. That was before the council. You made an amendment to say, okay, let's put a minimum amount that has to go towards economic development and job creation. Go and kind of talk about where you're coming from with that amendment and why that is important.
Well, and I think I've been fairly vocal in the past meetings when we've talked about economic development. I believe it is important. I believe that it helps our city grow. Now, I read the comments on social media and they'll say, well, we've kind of stalled out a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's true, but we don't want to stay there. We want to move forward. Now, you can see that the comments are there, and then you can hear from Jim Bergalis and, the pig iron building or
great
company
interview,
will come. Yeah, I mean, you just had an interview with him. He's in Minot because of good economic development, because of staff working with him to bring it to Minot instead of somewhere else. I mean, he saw that there was an interest in North Dakota because of the availability of natural gas, but he didn't have to come to Minot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was, do the work of MACEDC. So I believe that economic development is important, but I also know that when the funding for economic development goes into the general fund, it will not get funded. With the situations that we're in, you will pair things up and you're going to have to pick one or two. And it's unlikely that you're going to pick economic development. It just isn't there. And so that, in addition to the fact that the voters said, let's use a portion of this penny for economic development. And I think we need to honor that because we haven't had an election that has told us differently. I felt it was important that we set aside the amount of money that we have budgeted for in 2026. It was the MACEDC contract. It was the, we pay an annual fee to Service Basin Planning Council to carry out some projects and things for us, the facade improvement plan. So it was in the neighborhood of 900,000.
Yeah.
I think 900,000 gave a little bit of wiggle room in there.
Sure. You can maneuver a little bit. Yeah.
And so I just thought it made sense that we were going to keep our commitment to economic development.
Yeah.
But the motion failed.
The motion failed. Your amendment failed. The motion failed. It reset the budget a little bit. We'll talk about economic development when we're done with this.
Okay. Yeah, we'll finish up this.
So now this goes in, like I just said, it resets not just a portion of the budget. I mean, the budget's large, and this is, what are you guys going to do? You guys are now at it was mentioned
roughly
maybe
$1 million
budget shortfall. Just make it dramatic. You could either use reserves or cut things from the budget. Kind of, what's your view on this?
Well, and I think just as a clarification, so I mean, my amendment failed, which then we went back to the original motion, which was the new sales tax reconfiguration. That failed on a 4-3.
Yeah.
So, which means that some of the funding that we have allotted for 2026, the revenue isn't there. And we have to come up with this $1 million. And, you know, in just a brief update from Dave Lakefield, he said, well, we can either pull from reserves or we can make some more cuts. But we have to do something. We have to address the $1 million.
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, I think the best situation is to go back and reconsider the $900,000 because it does not impact the 26 budget that would be moving forward into the 27 budget. So it doesn't mess things up, you know, for all the work that we have accomplished. But I can't bring that back because I was on the failing side of that. So, you know, if there are some of my colleagues that want to bring it back, to me, that makes the most sense. If not, we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah.
If not that, I would assume the easiest way otherwise would probably be to just use reserves again at that stage.
It is, but yeah, we've just talked about. I mean, we've talked about it. I have a concern in that. You know, I mean, $1 million is a lot of money.
Then that adds up.
It does.
Yep.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird situation for it to come back at. The timing of this situation is weird because the budget already finalized. So it's either reserves or cuts, which are going to be hard to find at this point because it was already pretty well looked through on the budget side. The larger issue at play here is economic development.
More in general, yeah.
Been interesting to see everyone's view on economic development. Do you have a question on
that? Yeah, one thing that I've kind of noticed, and I know it's far more nuanced than this, but the appearance of it is it's almost a on or off switch, a yes or no. Either we're doing it or we're not doing it. When really it feels like this should be more of an ebbs and flows kind of thing. It should always be there, but it maybe feels like there are times where you should take some away, and then there are other times where maybe it's necessary to add a little bit more into those funds. And instead, it feels like it's much more of a conversation about either we need it or we don't need it.
I would agree with you. As far as the ebbs and flows, there are things that, you know, so the North American Steel thing.
Yeah.
I learned about it 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago.
Wow. Yeah.
This has been in the works for over 2 years.
At this point, yeah.
So if I would have had to vote on something, you know, before I had that information and said, well, yeah, maybe it's time to, you know, cut back funding a little bit to MACEDC because, well, really, what are they doing? We didn't know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these projects are several years in the making.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something else that I think will be equally interesting. That is, you know, that could be coming. I cannot say much more, but I think again it's something that has been worked on for at least 2 years.
Sure.
And so I think that's what we have to keep in mind, and what the public needs to know. I mean, there are times that the public doesn't have all of the information.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, they'll base their opinion on the information that they have. When they know the whole picture, maybe it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like I think you said earlier in the show, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about North American Iron Steel, $2 billion project, 1,000 to 2,000 jobs over the next 3 years, starting in 2026, late 2026, when they start construction on the project, and then 600 plus jobs in 2029 once the project is up and running. And sounds like phase one of the project, and it's not actual phases, but I asked Jim if there was phases. He's like, no, once we start, we start. But the future things that could happen, if you wanted to use the word phases, was that there could actually be manufacturing. So it goes from just creating the pig iron and doing that to actually, as he mentioned, making the microphone that we're talking with on right in a facility or the components for it. That's a huge deal. And you talk about like Minot being stagnant and stuff. Like this could really reset the game on that.
Oh, 100%. And, and these are good jobs. I mean,
Yes,
we
you're
saw
right.
what happened with some of the oil and energy influence and the amount of salaries that people were making. It was substantially different. And I've heard him say at least twice that many of these jobs will be 6-figure jobs.
Yeah. With a 2-year technical degree. You don't have to have an 8-year degree.
Yeah, exactly. So that's huge. And, so then you go back to, do we have the housing and what kind of housing? We've been focusing on some affordable housing, thinking of the Sentinel project.
Yep.
But now, well, okay, if you're making 6 figures, you're going to buy a little nicer house.
Yeah, you are.
And so how do you make all of that
How do you
work
try to balance that?
Right. And if we get over that 50,000 mark again, maybe we're going to get that Chick-fil-A. Maybe we're going to see some more retail, things like that we saw in the, the 13s, 14s, and 15s when Minot was definitely growing.
Well, and one thing about that time, too, was when you see the oil field booming and so many people going out there to work, it drove incomes up at other jobs around
Yes,
the town.
it did,
Whether it be
definitely.
retail or whatever it was.
Right.
I remember my first job in high school at that time was working at Sears, and we were selling, I sold TVs, and the amount of commission at that time you would get was, because TVs cost more back then, too. But aside from that, it was far more than what you were getting in other states, from what I was told. And they were paying you more commission to work at Sears because they needed people at that point in time. Sears still failed, but that's a different story.
TV is the one thing that was recession proof.
Effectively. TVs and phones.
So I'm very excited to see this come to fruition. I think it's a win-win for Minot, and with some of these other proposed projects, I think we're on a good path.
Right. I mean, just that we know of, you have Project Sentinel. You've already mentioned that, and you have this North American Iron,
Which are going to coincide timeline-wise pretty directly.
and they're talking. And I don't want to go too far down this because this is like a bigger deal that I probably can't even talk knowledgeably on. But they're talking about that metropolitan plan of adjusting our roads and stuff like that. And he's like, some of the roads may not need 4 lanes or whatever, and bike paths, and overall it's going to be a great thing. I'm sure they've done way more research, but I'm like, hey, just make sure that you've taken into consideration that there's 2 big projects coming into the area that could affect traffic dramatically.
At least 2.
So I do serve on the policy board for MPO.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of stakeholders that were brought in to get that information. So I think that should be in that report as well.
Yeah.
I think the list was like 40 or 50 people that were invited. Now, I don't know how many necessarily participated.
Yeah, sure.
But they were trying to get input from business owners, schools, military, people that would drive trucks, that kind of thing. Farmers are doing some ag, things. Anyway, so there was a good variety of people that were included in that.
It's good. All right, let's end here on this topic, and that is housing. Or what?
Speaking of input,
Okay.
the city survey finally wrapped up last Friday. Heard city manager Tom Joyce last night say there was over 1,200 people
1,200,
that
but
did
no
it.
haircut.
Yeah, he updated all that.
He doesn't quite have that.
But,
pretty disappointing.
But 1,200 is nice. I mean, it tripled what we'd had the last time. So that was
that is
good.
still good turnout for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You wanna-
And I'll say, okay, and sometimes now because I'm not running again, people have said it's Lisa Unleashed. If you did not
Got to.
participate in the survey, then don't complain.
There you go.
Don't complain.
fair.
If you don't vote, don't complain. If you don't, it was a quick survey to take.
Yeah, like
so
10
anyway,
minutes.
and so they'll say, well, I didn't. That wasn't my thought process. Well, if you didn't take the survey, the people who did take the survey, that's whose voice gets heard.
Yeah.
So
I took the survey.
There you go.
thank you. I
Star
did
man
too.
himself.
Did you do it, Kyle?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, of course you
It was
did.
like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I have a question on that. I want to get to housing, and that's where I want to end.
Okay.
But as the last topic, but on the survey, how should a council member view the survey when they're going and making decisions? We've heard it referenced in different ways, and sometimes there's a feeling for me as someone that's viewing the council meeting that like this whole decision is based off this survey. And mentally, I'm like, there's no way that's completely true, but that's what it feels like right now. As a council person, what kind of stock are you putting into the survey when you're actually going and making a motion, making a decision, etc.?
Well, it is part of the decision-making process. It is not the only thing that I rely on. I talk to people on a very regular basis, so I get their input. Obviously, we have people that come to our meetings and talk to us. I read the social media comments, whatever it is. And so it's just one of those components of the decision-making process.
Very good. Going to housing, lots of things are going to happen. And there was an alarming message that was said by one of the council people, I think it was last meeting, on the subject of housing. Part of the reason why they chose not to continue their business was because of the lack of buildable lots in Minot, basically. And in that alone, that little snippet could be an alarming thing. As you guys see this, you guys have been in, I'm sure, these discussions a lot more than what we have. You are very much aware of the people that are going to be coming to Minot. Is Minot not in a housing crisis, because that's one deal, but in a lot crisis and a land crisis and a buildable lot crisis where we're actually able to get development going? Or are we like 2 years away from even being able to get, or a year or two from getting development going?
Well, and again, I'm not in the development business, so I don't know the day-to-day, so I'm basing it on what people have told me. I think that there is a concern that we do not have enough affordable, buildable lots, because again, that's been the focus, is on some affordable housing, get people into a house that's $200,000, $250,000, put a family in there, that kind of thing. And so if a developer has to put in a lot of that front end work on the infrastructure, or they're paying a lot for the property, that kind of thing, it's really difficult to get that affordable housing available. It is a concern to me, because again, I've been around for many, many years. We went through a housing crisis in 2012, 13, 14, because we had a flood.
Post-flood oil.
And we had oil.
Right.
And, planning commission meetings were as long as council meetings are now, just to try to get some of these things. Our pants were on fire, and we're trying to get all of this housing put into place. Some of the decisions that we made were not the right decisions. We let some developers kind of do some things that were not probably the best, and we're now having to pay for it because they didn't put in a quality road, or they didn't put in a curb and gutter, those things. But the pressure was to get housing available for all these people who are living in hotels, or living in man camps, or whatever the situation was. So I think we need to be on the front end of this and do some smart planning so that we are ready when all of these people come. Because I think I think conservatively we can see, 4,000 to 5,000 people come.
Yeah, no, for sure. When you
Between
say
both projects too.
Right. Yeah. That's what. Yeah.
When you talk affordable housing, what is the price range that you guys are looking at? Because the housing market is totally reset in Minot.
Yes.
No, I'm asking Alderwoman Olson.
So I'll tell you what my affordable is.
yeah, exactly. But when I moved here in 2008, came from a place that had higher home prices, and come to Minot like $175,000. You could buy a home for your 5-member family, and you're gonna be comfortable in it. And it was pretty amazing. And now $175,000 doesn't buy you what could get you 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 15 years ago. When you guys talk about affordable housing, what is that like range of price? And
I would only be throwing out a guess, but I'm going to say for a single family house, it's in that $200,000 to $250,000 range. But I'm guessing it. I mean, we get that information,
right?
We get the statistics on what incomes are, all of that, and so I can't say.
Yeah, no, that's
I guess
fair.
the other thing I would add is that, because we are Midwest, we're rural, we're used to everybody living in a single family house, that isn't necessarily what everybody wants either. And so I think some investment in some, nicer condo buildings, or some townhomes or some apartments, to give a little bit of variety, because as generations change, not everyone is interested in having a single family house and maintaining it and that kind of thing too.
And that's one of those things you saw kind of in that last big development boom up on North Hill here, was a lot of those condos and townhomes kind of go up.
Yeah. Well, if you get condos that are under an HOA, some people like that too, because then less snow removal, less maintenance and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonathan knows about that.
Go away. There's a bad story that he's referencing. So very cool. Very cool. Well, overall, great conversation today. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. As we go round the corner to 2026.
Winter is here almost.
Yeah, winter's almost here. Thanksgiving's around the corner. Christmas, all that stuff. What does the future look like for Minot?
Well, I think the future does look bright, knowing that some newer things are coming back. Here's what I've seen, and it's not necessarily based on what people have seen as good, because a lot of times people get involved when they're dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Right. And there are people that are dissatisfied with some situations that are occurring right now, but it gets them involved. And I think that's the best case scenario.
Right.
I have heard from more people in the last 6 to 8 months than I had heard in all of the years prior to that.
Wow.
They want to see things normalized. They want to see their voice represented, and they're doing things to accomplish that goal.
Sure.
And that's great. And as we look to an election in 2026, I think that there will be some really good candidates. I think we'll have high voter turnout because people want. They have a vision of what their Minot looks like,
Right.
and they're going to get out and make sure that happens.
Yeah.
We've seen them kind of start to, that voter base wake up a little bit over the
Yes.
last couple of years.
Yes.
I mean, just looking at places where you're able to gauge participation, citizen satisfaction survey, 1,200 people, that's 3 times or whatever the previous time. You look at the amount of viewers on YouTube page and Facebook page for City of Minot, it's incredible.
Yep. I haven't checked lately, but from when I did check prior, we consistently get more views for our city council meetings than Charleston, South Carolina does.
Oh, interesting.
Which that was like 8 months ago. So
Okay.
take that with a grain of salt.
I
But
think
at one time,
that's because Charleston was mentioned at a city council meeting. That's the reason why Charleston.
it
This
was
really random.
Oh, I know where you're going though. I know.
But it randomly popped up in my recommended because I'm always watching this, and so I saw it, and
Gotcha.
there was like 8 people watching it.
And we had a good turnout. Not a great, but we had a good turnout for the mayoral election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It can be better.
for an off-year, off-season election.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
This year would be cool to see like 5K plus. That'd be a pretty neat bar to
Why
surpass.
not 10?
Why not?
Why
It's
not
possible.
10?
And why
It
not?
is.
Why not?
Yeah.
I think,
We
you know,
have
because
this-
you have to consider that, some of our population are people that can't vote because they're
Yeah.
under the age of 18 or whatever.
right.
But, honestly, why couldn't we get 10,000
Yeah.
people?
That would
I think
be
we have 30,000
amazing.
eligible voters or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
You can't get a third of them out.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree
Let's do
with
it,
that.
Minot. Let's do it.
Hey, why not Minot?
Yeah, why not? Well, we'll find out. So again, appreciate you coming on. Great conversation.
Yep.
Thank you to everyone for watching this. We are currently, let me pull up the number.
Are we there? Did we make
No,
it?
we didn't make it. I don't know if I'll be able to find the number fast enough because I got to a different spot.
Hold on. I can
But
pull. Well, you might have a more updated number.
we are 4 subscribers away from reaching
996.
1,000. Yes.
Almost
So if anybody wants to be part of that
Tyler will
4,
cut his hair.
yeah,
Well,
yes.
yeah, I will.
He will.
Don't,
We'll
I
cut it
might
off.
have one set for next week anyways, but it'll totally be because of the subscriber
No.
count.
We're talking like a 2-inch.
Okay, yeah. No, how about this? If we get there by the end of today, I'll let Jonathan cut my hair. Oh, why did I say that?
Okay, sweet. So we're gonna knock some doors today.
Why not? I'm ready for
All
it.
right,
I
so
don't care.
Kyler will
It's gotta
shave his
happen.
head if we reach 1,000 subscribers today.
Today.
I like it.
Wow.
All right,
I should-
4 subscribers away. Kind of a big deal. We're excited about it. Hit that 1,000 subscriber milestone. So if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, do us a favor. Do Kyler a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Join the decoding community. Thanks for watching this episode, and we'll be back this Thursday, 9 a.m. with a bald Kyler and some great stuff to talk about. Thanks for watching.